don't have much at all in the passing game. But they're big and they're physical and they play hard. And this is not going to be an easy game for the Buckeyes, I don't think. I mean, you can look at comparable opponents. This is actually a team that lost to Illinois, the team that the Buckeyes hung 55 points on a couple weeks ago. So you look at some of those, comparable opponents, and you wonder if Minnesota can make a game of it. But then again, if you take a weather factor and figure the Buckeyes might have a very hard time throwing the football, yes, the Buckeyes can run the ball, but it's a lot tougher when the other team knows you've got to run the ball. So it could be tight, and certainly they'll be fired up, and it could be a tight ball game, even though the Buckeyes on paper look like they should roll.
Right, because of the weather, and you've got, Minnesota, even though the schedule's been what it is, they're top 30 in the nation in rushing. They're averaging 2.25 a game on the ground, and they're top 25 in defensive scoring as well. They're averaging about 21 points a game that they give up. So normally that may not be as much of a factor, but like you said, if it's dumping down and it's all of that, then that's going to change. That's going to change your high flying, highfalutin offense and all of that we've been talking about with JT Barrett and the offensive exploits that they've had here this season. But then you go down and you got to prove you can win an old traditional type Ohio State game too, and that'll be an interesting change of it. But yeah, that changes the outlook, and you hit it right on the head with what I was saying. You can't go into this game trying to win by so many. You need to go in here and win, because this is a ranked team, and this is a team that, as you said, can definitely go out there and do what they've got to do. Cobb's had 1,200 yards plus for the season, so they can go out there and put it on the ground. They can shorten the game, all of that stuff, and the weather could make it interesting. What do you think happens? Ohio State, what do you think here when they take on Minnesota? Noon game, which I guess that helps a bit with the weather, because at least you're not late night as well. But how do you think Ohio State handles this challenge?
Well, I first of all, it's going to be very interesting. You've got it'll be the first game JT Barrett has played under freezing temperatures.
Yeah,
he's a kid from Wichita Falls, Texas, so he hasn't played a lot of football in Minnesota type conditions. So that'll be one of the most interesting things to see how and if he throws the ball around the yard. I just got to believe that Urban Meyer's Buckeyes, they have not. You could say they came out a little bit flat on Virginia Tech, but I think that was just getting out coached and with a real green quarterback. But this team shows up every Saturday. Urban Meyer's Buckeyes. They show up and they typically start fast in games, and I expect no different this week. I expect them to be focused and come out. And I'm thinking, even with the weather factor, I'm thinking they're going to score 35 points, and there's absolutely no way that Minnesota scores 25 on this Buckeye defense. They are very one-dimensional with their running game. I think if you load up to stop Cobb and just shut down that running game for him, there's very little that this passing attack has. One guy to watch, and I love Max Williams. I don't know how much you've seen of this guy, but he is a huge tight end. He's outside of the running back, Cobb, he's their best player on the team. A huge kid. I think he's about 6'8". At least he looks 6. He might be 6'7", 6'8", something like that. 250-pound tight end, good hands, great blocker.
I love big tight ends.
An unbelievable athlete for his size. And he's a guy to watch because he's going to be playing on Sundays next year, and wouldn't mind seeing him in an orange hat. But check out this tight end. It's Max with 2 X's, and he's a real player for the Gophers. So between him and the running back Cobb, those are the guys that you got to watch for. And beyond that, there's not a lot there. There's not a lot at the quarterback position. There's not a lot at the receiver spots. Those two guys are the guys that Buckeyes going to have to focus on. But I'm looking at 38-17 or something like that. Probably it might not match the margin of TCU's win over them, but I think the Buckeyes win fairly easily.
Sounds good. I'm looking for a Buckeyes victory, too. I don't know. At least I'm in there with you. 17, 20 points, somewhere in there. The weather may dampen it down. Who knows? We'll have to see just exactly how bad it is. Sometimes that stuff's overblown. Sometimes you wake up and it's not. So I guess we'll find out on Saturday afternoon. And then Sunday.
Jerry, one thing I wanted to mention to you before we got off Buckeye talk is that by the time we talk again, the Buckeye basketball team will be rolling, and we'll have their opener already finished. They're gonna face UMass Lowell. here this Friday in their opener, and they had an exhibition game against Walsh the other day, and if you haven't been paying attention, everybody is talking about D'Angelo Russell, the true freshman point guard at Ohio State. We'll miss Aaron Kraft on defense, but boy, D'Angelo Russell is a guy that the Buckeyes are gonna have something at the point guard position that they haven't had for a few years with Aaron Kraft, and that is a scorer. Russell shoots the three, he scores inside, he's a distributor, quick as a cat, and just a guy that everybody's going to enjoy watching this year. Just the fact that he's starting for Thad Matta as a true freshman ought to tell you enough. But they'll be rolling out D'Angelo Russell and Shannon Scott at the 2, and Sam Thompson at the small forward. Mark Loving is going to start, I believe, at power forward, and Amir Williams in the middle. And they've brought in a couple of new big men this year, Anthony Lee, a transfer, and there's another freshman, Keith Bates-Jop, Kata Bates-Jop, I should say, a small forward. So there's a ton of talent there, and they're ranked 20th in the nation coming out. I have a feeling they're going to be ranked higher than that once the season gets rolling. But watch for the Buckeyes this Friday for their basketball opener, and promises to be a fun year.
That's right. I didn't even realize that's before we talk again. Friday they're at it here, man. Their first 5 games at home before they go on the road. They've got that Louisville game coming up at the beginning of December. Really, more than that. They've got a truckload of home games in the early part of that season schedule, if I remember right.
Yeah, well, that's the way that almost all the big teams do it. They load up the home plate with games, and the Buckeyes have a task where they are coming up with some schools you've never heard of to fill out that early home slate. But, they do have some big games. They're playing. I believe they're playing Carolina too this year. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but they've got the Louisville game and several other tough opponents before they get into Big Ten play. But there's also a couple of real cupcakes on there.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about all of that, but it starts this weekend. So by the time you and I come back, man, we'll be able to talk about some football and some basketball. See the overlap of seasons. Yeah, Coach Waters, those guys, they start officially on Friday as well. Even though they had their exhibition the other day, man. So no shortage of stuff for us to talk about, man. They're hooping it up, Dan. I love it, man.
Yeah. Hey, one other thing, Jared, before we go and talk a little Browns.
Whatever.
I don't know if you've heard about the Austin Hatch situation, but Austin Hatch is a freshman basketball player at the University of Michigan, and he's a kid who just has an incredible story. I don't know if you've heard about him. He survived 2 plane crashes in his life. He was 8 years old, and his father was a doctor, was flying a private plane with his whole family, and it crashed, and his brother and his sister were both killed, and his mother was killed in the first plane crash. 8 years later, he's 16. He's flying another plane with his father. They crash again, and his father and his stepmother are both killed in that crash. Yep. He survived both. He was in a induced coma for some weeks or months. Came back, and so anyway, here's a guy who has lost his entire family in 2 separate plane crashes 8 years apart, and he was, doubtful if he was going to live, and he came back, fought his way back, and he's on the Michigan basketball team this year as a freshman. Got in the game the other day, made a free throw, and it was just an unbelievable kind of story. This is one of those human interest stories that you just can't even imagine. Google Austin Hatch is the kid's name, and read his story. It's just incredible. I thought I would mention it because we're talking about kicking off the basketball season. Normally we tell Michigan jokes, but this kid is no Michigan joke. He's quite a story, an admirable kid, and just an unbelievable situation. And I just wanted to throw it out there to say, hey, if you don't know about this Austin Hatch story, by all means look it up. I tweeted an article about it this morning. If you follow me on Twitter at DWiz, you'll be able to find it in my Twitter feed this morning. But check it out because it's ending. And
surviving and thriving despite incredible odds. High school senior
up here as you were talking about it. Absolutely amazing, man. I heard about this. I heard some people talking about this, and Yeah, that's right there. And I hear you in the chat room, Charles, but this one is one that you can't. It's a shame he doesn't go to Ohio State. He goes to Michigan. So unfortunately, but you can't even joke about it because, what do they say? The luckiest thing you could do is travel with somebody who'd been in a plane crash because they're never going to be in two in their lifetime. Man, this kid was, each one of them, tragic to no end. And then for him to come back and even be alive, let alone able to play basketball, nuts. Absolutely nuts right there.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
Inspiring.
And, like
Inspiring
I said,
is not even
to point it
word.
out because it just blew my mind. And I had heard about it before, but I just read a couple more articles about it earlier this morning. I said, well, I'm just gonna give this kid a plug on the Sports Fix and see where that goes.
Absolutely, man. And I'll tell you what, like you said, I'll find a link. I'll put this on the Facebook and Twitter for you guys as well here. But, I mean, you want to say inspirational, but then, man, you still think about the fact that he still has to deal day to day with the real part of the story. But, man, then you go, wow, it's inspirational that he's playing basketball. But, man, I couldn't imagine, let alone all of it. Yeah, you guys, definitely Google search Austin Hatch. I'm going to put the article out there on Facebook and Twitter up. And yeah, I know, Charles, they do, but that has nothing to do with the story. I don't like those guys up there either. Dan Wismar from the Cleveland Fan joining us here. Before we wrap things up, you knew where I was going. You're going there. You'll be there. Browns in Houston here coming up this weekend. What do you think happens?
Well, I'm counting on the newfound home field advantage that the Browns never seemed to have before, but somehow have located this year. And it's just been great down there this season, loud and raucous and crazy. And it just however good it's been at Brown Stadium in past years, and sometimes it's been miserable and sometimes it's been okay. Things have just been ratcheted up many times this year. And I just think it's a very real home field advantage now that we've had that we really have never had before. I like the Browns this week, not least because we're facing a guy making his first NFL start. We talked a little bit about it Monday. Big guy, strong arm, like John said, a couple of Tom Brady disciples going at it, but one of them's got the decided advantage over the other, not just the home crowd, but several NFL starts under his belt and quite a bit more experience in the league. And I just think Pettine will draw up some things to keep Mallett confused. They'll have those defensive linemen standing up at the line of scrimmage and faking stunts and faking blitzes and coming off the corner at them. And I just think it'll be enough to get another victory out of these guys. They've got some offensive and defensive weapons that you've got to account for, but so do the good guys. And I'm looking for a close win, but maybe a 5 or 6 point win this week for the Browns.
It's the Brady Backup Bowl, baby, and like John said, Tom Brady's gonna be looking on like a proud papa at this one, at his proteges going out there and then trying to continue his deal there. Interesting, man, and I can't wait to see it. I'm with you, man. I think if the Browns show up and play the way they did, I don't know if you saw it. I tweeted and posted it out this week. Mike Freeman writes for the NFL for a bunch of different sites, and he had an article this week about the Browns that would not only about their start to this season and how you can enjoy it, but basically the gist of it is this is not a one-season turnaround. This is not a blip in the radar. This is a legitimate change in the course of a franchise, and how you can believe that this is the future going forward for at least the next few years for the Browns. I thought, man, it's one thing because it's one thing to go with the narrative of I'm too scared to lay myself out there, so I'm going to say, oh, well, this is a great story, but let's see where it goes. But it was a pretty good little article that laid out there the case for this being a turnaround, not short term, but for the next 4 or 5 years with the franchise.
Yeah, and I am all on board with that. I believe that that's true, and I guess all that would need to be true is that if the coach is held over for a second season, I don't think there's any doubt about that right now, and I'm only saying that half in jest. Continuity is the biggest thing that the club has lacked, the team has lacked ever since they've been back in terms of top management as well as on-the-field management. Clearly, we're going to have that going forward. It's something that Haslam values, and we talked about getting lucky with the head coach last time we talked. Maybe that's what's happening here. if they do win the division, certainly next year's schedule will be loaded up and will be much tougher than this year's is. And that'll be sort of the true test of whether the team graduates from bad to good or if they remain somewhere in between.